Last week, I talked about How I Met Your Mother Season 1, Episode 19, titled Mary the Paralegal, and how that episode pushed me to realize just how dismissive the show is about the women who are not part of the core gang, treating them as disposable the minute they've served their purpose, and how we see this manifest in Lily and Robin's interactions with the rest of the boys, and with these women when they show up. But I also mentioned in the video that the episode also helped me pinpoint a thought I'd had about Lily leading up to that, which was then crystallized in the episode and confirmed for me in the episodes that followed because, yes, people, I am finally done with How I Met Your Mother Season 1. And as we got to the end of the season with Ted comforting a heartbroken Marshall who is dealing with the fact that Lily legit just up and left weeks before their wedding, the one thought that kept screaming in my head was, "Oh, Lily, you delusional dumbass. What are you doing?" Because a lot of what led to that point and her final choice at the end of the episode for me was rooted in Lily's special brand of naive idealism that I personally think will still come around and bite her in the ass. Let's talk about that. Now, before I dive into the rest of the video, for those who might just be finding my channel, hi, I'm Noria, and I'm currently doing my first time watch of How I Met Your Mother. As such, I have been making a series of videos as I go along, talking about these characters, my thoughts and analysis on them, just to see if I'm correct in the things I'm calling out. Now, like I said, this is my first time watching the show and I've avoided all spoilers because it just wasn't something I was particularly interested in whilst it was airing. Therefore, please, if you're talking about the show in the comments of my videos, please take note of the episode that I've watched up to so you don't accidentally spoil things for me on future development, as I like my first time watches to be ones where I am not influenced by expectations of what is certainly coming in future episodes. Plus, I think it's fun when I guess and you being able to have that thought of, damn, she's so close, or no, she's so far off about that. But yeah, if you want to follow me on this journey and would love to hear me yap about this show, do consider hitting subscribe. If you haven't done so yet, check out my How I Met Your Mother playlist, like this video if you haven't, and let's get back to the rest of the video. Now, back in the episode Mary the Paralegal, whilst Ted is having the existential crisis of liking a woman who is funny and smart and hot, but is convinced she's a prostitute, thus making her to him unacceptable, stupid Ted, all the while unaware that she's actually a paralegal and Barney was merely messing with him to prove a point, we had a brief moment when Mary and Lily interact that was what made me instantly clock Lily as being naive. And I know some people probably hear me call Lily naive and think that maybe I'm stripping her of her agency or treating her as a child, and that is not the case. Lily Aldrin is very much a grown woman. She's someone who knows her own mind, is very outspoken, and can be quite manipulative, as we see with how she handles Ted in the milk episode, which I will come back to shortly. But as I was saying, back in Mary the Paralegal, Lily's running gag in the episode is the fact that she's so exhausted because the school board has cut away her kindergarten class's nap time, which meant that Lily, who used the time that the kids spent napping to nap herself, I know, irresponsible of her, but anyway, Lily uses the nap time to get her own naps in, and now that the kids aren't napping due to new school board policies, they are cranky and tired, and so is Lily. As she makes the complaints to Mary, who out of concern had asked her why she was so tired, Barney cuts in, urging Lily to quit her job and instead work at a private school, which would remove her having to deal with school boards and their arbitrary policies, and she will be able to make a ton more money. Lily scoffs, telling Barney that she doesn't base her life's decision on how much money she's going to make, unlike Barney and Marshall. A statement that has Marshall quickly pointing out that it's just an internship for the record, and Lily continues that if she sacrifices her values for an easy buck, what would that make her? To which Mary chimes in, a prostitute, to the horror of Ted, Marshall, and Barney, with the former two still operating under the misconception that Mary is very much a prostitute. Not going to lie, I did kind of cackle at that. Nice touch. But like I said at the start of this video, that interaction was what made me take several steps back mentally on Lily. Because there is something about the disdain that she has for more profitable work that just makes her look very naive to me with her idealism. Because can we go back to how and what circumstances exactly led Marshall to giving up his dream internship at the firm that he would have done some public good at, but wouldn't have made any money whilst working there? If I remember correctly, it was because Lily tested out a wedding dress, an expensive wedding dress that she then accidentally sat on a piece of cake whilst wearing and accidentally tore up whilst attempting to stand, which meant that the charge for the dress went on their credit card. Marshall got a new suit that was way out of his pride range because, Barney lied and he was quite ready to just save up to slowly make up the difference. However, upon hearing the cost of Lily's dress, that was what pushed him to finally give in to Barney's urging to come and work at his company's legal department. In that conversation, we see Marshall stepping in to cover the cost, and Lily can't really do anything to help with that because she is on a public school teacher's salary. Now, before anyone thinks otherwise, no, I am not attempting to knock down public schools. Being a teacher is hard work, particularly so in a public school, especially because society as it is doesn't actually pay teachers their worth, whether or not they teach at a public or private school. Anyway, my point has nothing to do with Lily's admirable decision to work at a public school. What I instead am side-eyeing is the fact that she's doing that and still has the audacity to be snippy with Marshall for him having no other choice but to go for the internship so he can make enough money to cover their bills. To me, it reads like Lily is very convinced about what her world should be, and Marshall having to make sacrifices is him selling out, but that is just part of her naive idealism. Lily wants the freedom to be able to maintain her moral standing whilst unwilling to accept that we unfortunately live in a capitalist society and dreams can only take you so far when you're drowning in debt. And this is even more important when you consider the fact that in her conversations with Marshall in the Belly Full of Turkey episode, i.e. season 1 episode 9, she and Marshall get into an argument about where they would raise their kids when they have them. Marshall would like to bring the kids and raise them in his family's hometown in Minnesota, whilst Lily, who is a New York native, insists that their kids have to be raised in New York. And all I could think of when she was going off in a conversation with Mary the paralegal was, does Lily have any idea how expensive it is to raise a child and how triple expensive it is to raise a child on a public teacher's salary in New York? Because I don't think that thought is crossing her mind. It's not something that she considers important. What is important to her is for her not to, in her own words, sell her values for an easy buck, the same way Marshall has done. Totally forgetting the exact circumstances that led Marshall to doing that in the first place and the very prominent role she played in that situation, and also how that decision is meant to affect their lives. But you see, with Lily, that doesn't matter because she's over there living in La La Land about how she will get to keep her values and contribute to raising her family on a barely put together salary whilst resenting Marshall for turning into a corporate lawyer. Now, say what you would about Barney, but him suggesting that Lily can still get to work with kids just within a private school system rather than public school, so she isn't as bound to the school board as she is with the latter, and she gets to make more money, is a realistic suggestion given the circumstances. They are about to get married and raise a family in New York. The only problem, however, is that Lily doesn't want realism. She's perfectly fine with her idealistic take on things. And I don't know about you, but I found that very naive. And that was confirmed for me further in season 1, episode 21, titled Milk, which is the episode, for those who need reminding, where Ted gets the call from Love Solutions. Remember Love Solutions? The matchmaking agency that uses math to accurately match their clients with those who are perfect for them. Well, turned out that they'd had a management change, with the old matchmaker having been booted out the door and a new person's taken over her role. And this new guy tells Ted that he's found him his perfect match. Ted is skeptical at first, but after he shows up at the office and is given a file that has the information of his match, he reads through it, sees that she checks every single box for him and declares that she is perfect. He immediately asks that they set up a date for him to meet the girl. And indeed, Ted shows up at McLaren's super early, excited to meet the girl of his dreams. But then Lily calls and asks him to come help her. Turns out that she's at Dutchess County with a flat tire and she's driving Marshall's car. She calls Ted to come help her change her flat tire. Now, the knee-jerk alarm bells rang, of course, because why oh why would Lily be calling Ted instead of, I don't know, calling her fiancé whose car she drove to come get her? We'll get the answer to that shortly. At the moment, though, Ted is reluctant about going to Lily's as his date would be there any minute. But after Lily tells him that she's terrified as it's getting late and she's alone in the car, he takes a $90 cab ride over to her to go help her because they are friends. When he arrives, he tells her that thankfully his date, who is perfect, was okay with them pushing the time for said date back so that he can help Lily change her flat tire, and asks Lily what on earth she's doing in Dutchess County with Marshall's car. And that is when Lily, having had Ted swear and promise to keep her words a secret, tells him that she's been battling insomnia for the past month, as having Victoria go to Germany to pursue her dreams has led Lily to thinking about her own dreams as an artist that she had given up on. This is, of course, a little nod to episode 20 titled Best Prom Ever, where we had learned about Lily's dream of traveling the world and making art and her excitement at leaving her high school and going into college, where she was going to experience it all, only to meet Marshall on the very first night at her dorm, and the rest, as we know, is history. But right now, however, she's beset with thoughts of what could be. And it turned out that she had applied for an art fellowship in San Francisco, and the interview was that very night in New Haven, hence why she was driving Marshall's car. And can I just take a moment to point out the selfishness of this? Like, I already said it earlier back in episode 3 when Lily took off her ring while she and Robin were at the bar, that I could see the threads of Lily being beset with the thought of what could be for her. And I understood why, because Marshall is the only man she's ever known and truly loved, and she hadn't really had the chance and opportunity to fully explore herself outside of him. So I am not going to begrudge her wanting to give this heart fellowship a try and see what it could possibly bring. My problem, though, is the fact that this is a conversation she should be having with Marshall, not Ted. Especially not with the fact that she's using Marshall's car and his gas to drive all the way to New Haven for an interview to a fellowship that would clash with their wedding day. Meaning that if she goes, then she wouldn't be getting married to Marshall. Marshall, who bought a new suit, who took on a job to help pay off the debt from her wedding dress. Naive idealism. Anyway, Lily is like, sure, she could read this flat tire as a sign for her not to go to New Haven to interview for the fellowship. Ted, though, wants to know why Lily's even making this choice, why she even thought to apply to a fellowship all the way in San Francisco when there are way other art fellowships she could get that are much closer and right there in New York. He's not buying Lily's words that all she wanted to know was if her painting was good enough to get in, but he does accept when Lily promises that she isn't going anymore because to her, clearly the flat tire is a sign that she should not go. Except after Ted fixes her flat tire, she immediately tries to convince him that he should go with her to New Haven for her interview. Ted tries to dissuade her by telling her that it's going to be a big mistake, and Lily insists that sometimes you can't know if something is a mistake or not until you've done it and then look back to realize that it is indeed a mistake, which, to be fair, a very valid point. The only problem, however, is that you also need to make room for the fact that your mistake can possibly cost you. that there would be a cost to it that you should be willing to pay. The problem is that Lily, naive idealist as she is, does not want to even think about the cost. Because in her world, that is not really going to happen. She gets to pause. We'll get to that in a bit. But in her world, she gets to pause and then go back to where things were before she hit pause, even if the pause meant, oh, I'm not marrying you anymore, Marshall. Once again, we'll get back to that. Now, back to the episode. After, having that statement with Ted, she gets into Marshall's car and drives off to New Haven, leaving Ted behind. Yes, Ted, the person who left his date, who is still waiting for him, by the way, to come help her with the flat tire. She leaves him there and drives off to the interview. Thankfully, Robin shows up after he calls to pick him up and drive him back home. And when he gets home, Lily's back from the interview because remember, he was stranded for a while. And he and her proceed to have a conversation in code because remember, he promised to not tell Marshall. Anyway, he asks her if she did get the milk, which is code for successfully partaking in the interview, to which she says she did. And he then follows it up by asking her if she wants to drink the milk, to which she smiles and shakes her head and tells him no. A response that has Ted sighing in relief. Except it was all a lie. Because in the season finale, after Marshall overhears the message that's been left on the answering machine for Lily, which informs her that her application was successful and she's gotten into the art fellowship in San Francisco, a news that devastates Marshall because, I repeat, going for the fellowship means that their wedding is cancelled. Lily still insists that she has no plans of taking the fellowship and she just wanted to know if she had what it takes to get in. And now that she's in, she really wants to go. Yes, she wants to go. And that is the point where Marshall expresses what his concerns are. It's not about their cancelled wedding, but about the fact that there is no guarantee that after Lily leaves for the 3 months fellowship, she wouldn't realize that Marshall doesn't fit in her life anymore. He's terrified that she would change and wouldn't want him anymore and wants her to promise that that wouldn't happen. Lily cannot make that promise because you see what she wants, this naively idealistic woman, what she wants is for Marshall to pause and wait for her, but she refuses to pause, i.e. make the promise that nothing would change from our end, and still wants to be able to have her cake and eat it too. And anyway, she tries and succeeds in distracting Marshall by having sex with him. And of course, by the time we get to the end of the finale, she's gone and the wedding is off. And that for me is my bone of contention. And the reason why I think Lily Aldrin is naively idealistic, because it takes a special brand of idealism to want the best of both worlds, which has always been consistent with Lily. She wants to keep her integrity by keeping her hands clean from corporate greed and capitalism, and wants the high horse that would have her look down on Marshall for, to her, selling out his values for cheap bucks, but at the same time accepts that compromise of his as a way to resolve their debt, one that she contributes halfway, partly to. She wants to give her art a try, which is all fair and good, but at the same time wants to keep Marshall on a leash waiting for her, just in case it turns out that everything that she's planned out for herself might not pan out the way in which she wants or expects. She's treating this man who she claims to love and who loves her back like he's the standby generator who has to wait in the wings for her and whenever she's ready to come back to him. And that is where I think the part where she'll be getting a wake-up call would come in. Like, there is no certainty of that, Lily Aldrin. Now, can I say for certain that Marshall and Lily aren't endgame? I don't know. Like I said, I just finished season 1. But from the clues that we've been given by Ted's talk with his kids, I'm guessing that Lily and Marshall both are still quite present in Ted's children's lives, meaning that maybe they eventually get back together. Maybe they probably did get married. But I don't think that the journey to that is going to be as easy and smooth sailing as Lily probably hopes it would be when she comes back. Because what her actions have shown us, the audience, and Marshall as well, is that she is willing to sacrifice Marshall and her life with him for the potential of an alternate world where she gets to live the life she's always wanted and believes she deserves, without taking into consideration that while she's on that search, her demands is for Marshall to wait indefinitely for her without any certainty that she would wait for him as well. And I don't know about you, but that is just incredibly naive of her and idealistic, because life doesn't work that way. Demanding Marshall support her dreams without being willing to, at the same time, give him the comfort of knowing that she would still want him when those dreams are realized is her living in this bubble that she gets to have both. The room to pursue what she wants and the assurance that Marshall will be waiting in the wings regardless of her inability to promise him that she would still want him should those dreams come true. And I don't know about you, but that is a depressing state of affairs for Marshall in my book. But those are just my thoughts, of course. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Do you agree or disagree with me about Lily's naive idealism? Please let me know in the comments. Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share this if you want. Support me on Patreon if you can. If you cannot, however, do consider checking out my other channels. One of them is my gaming channel where I put up my gameplay videos. The other is my ASMR channel for those who find my voice soothing and like stories about myth and folktales. The link to all of them are in the description box if you are so inclined. Whichever the case, however, I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.